Hey guys, welcome back for another episode of The Suited Shootist. I'm going to apologize. This week kind of got away from me a little bit, and so This is definitely a last minute video this week. I'm fresh off of jujitsu, so I'm not nearly as kind of polished and put together as I would care to be. But what I want to talk about this week is the fact that while the main focus of our concealment efforts, especially the way I've talked about them up to this point, has been avoiding negative outcomes, avoiding official interactions with law enforcement, avoiding getting targeted by violent criminal actors or, getting made at your workplace. I think that another part of this that really needs to be addressed is sometimes it's just good manners. You know, I mean, there's going to be folks out there who everybody in their circle is a gun carrier, and the main topic of conversation whenever those folks get together is, what are you carrying today? And that's cool. It's not everybody's reality though, and I'll use myself as an example. Even down here in Texas, when I was working at the in construction materials, you want to talk about a very forgiving and supportive environment. Everybody in that office had a carry permit. I mean, it was an office full of good old boys, and politically it was bright red, so it's not like it was a hostile environment. I was the only one that carried a gun regularly. Nobody had a problem with the idea of carrying guns. They just didn't find it necessary on a day-to-day basis. These were kind of the casual gun carriers that might keep it in the console of their vehicle or something like that. And, that's its own set of problems. But the idea of carrying a firearm on their person on a day-to-day basis was abnormal. And so when you think about that, where even in an environment where it's supportive of the concept, the practice is still somewhat alien. When you expand that out into other social circles, it's not uncommon where I will find myself in a social setting or sometimes a professional setting, and odds are pretty good I'm the only one with a gun on me. And while that's not necessarily going to be a real big problem, there's not really a need for it to be a topic of conversation, It's kind of like whatever underwear you're wearing. At the end of the day, nobody cares. It's your fucking business. And it really only becomes problematic when the lack of care and attention comes to other people's attention. And so I think that the idea of polite concealment is one that we should strive for a couple of reasons. Number one, it helps to reduce the potential interpretation that we are carrying at somebody. The most sort of stereotypical example of this are the open carriers that will go into, say, a suburban Starbucks and are doing it to prove a point and really just draw attention, and tends to not really generate a lot of sympathetic support for the idea. It's certainly not that egregious, but in the same vein, there are people out there that will take this very socially illiterate standpoint of, whatever, it's my right to do so, I'm not doing anything wrong, so if anyone has a problem with it, fuck them, that's their problem. Factually correct statement, not one that's necessarily going to win any friends. And, I've talked about this before. Anybody that is on the polar opposite end of the spectrum from us as it pertains to attitudes towards the armed lifestyle, very likely not going to change their opinions. But there's a whole bunch of people in that middle section of the bell curve that are fairly apathetic to the whole idea. And the more accessible you can be to people like that, and the less polarizing you can be, and the more, unfortunately, for lack of a better term, normal you can seem to them, if and when they discover that you do carry a firearm, or if they start veering into the gun curious space and decide to approach you for advice, now all of a sudden you're in a position where you can take an agnostic and turn them into an ally. But if you're somebody whose attitude towards their carry firearm is basically to whip it out and wag it in everybody's face, at that point you're just being an antagonistic dickhead and nobody wants to talk to you. So, you're not necessarily going to be in a position where you're not going to position yourself to have a positive impact. And at the end of the day, I am not fond of activist carry. I think that there are better ways to drive the point home. But, again, everybody's got the right to do whatever they deem fit within the law, so you do you. But given that our goal is to navigate this world with as little social friction as possible, I'm trying to avoid even the fairly benign, hey, what's that? Or, there's a bump under your shirt, or just the benign inquiries that may not go anywhere but possibly could. Because again, I try to drive this home. The negative outcomes generally don't go from 0 to dude's got a gun. It's goes from 0 to that looks out of the ordinary, I wonder why that is, to additional scrutiny, to whatever the flavor of negative outcome is. Sometimes that negative outcome can be official interaction with law enforcement. Sometimes that interaction can be losing your job. Sometimes that negative outcome can be an unnecessarily awkward social encounter with people that will then distance themselves in the future, because the idea that you deemed it necessary to carry a firearm in their presence made them uncomfortable. And again, there are the hardliners out there that will write those people off as someone that they would not want to interact with anyways. And that's fine. If you only want to surround yourself with completely like-minded people, that's your prerogative. I am fortunate in that I've had a fairly diverse set of social circles, from the time I was in grade school all the way up to now. And personally, I feel like not only am I my life is richer for it, but it's also helped me really hone and refine some perspectives, because I can always go to somebody that will challenge one of my ideas. And one of two things happens. I think it was Carlos Gracie who is quoted as saying, I either win or I learn. And, while that certainly applies to jiu-jitsu, it's equally relevant in the social discourse, where if you're having a philosophical discussion with somebody, either you're able to hone and refine your argument to the point where it's sufficiently persuasive, they come around to your side of seeing things, or you realize that you have holes in your argument and may need to reconsider some stuff. So again, the point of this is that the idea of concealment is not just hiding the gun from bad people or hiding the gun from people that can make your life complicated. Sometimes it's just good manners to do so. And so, I think that this space could certainly do with a little more social fluency and, a little more of that interpersonal interaction, and, not necessarily being so instantly standoffish about gun carry. Because here's the thing, just because somebody is uncomfortable or finds the idea that you're carrying a firearm weird or unusual doesn't necessarily mean they think that you shouldn't be allowed to do it. They might, from their perspective, deem it as unnecessary, But again, that's based on their life experience and perspective up to this point. Unnecessary versus shouldn't be allowed to are two very different things. And if the immediate reaction to that is, no, you're dumb and you're stupid, and if you don't do this, then, what are you thinking? You're living with your head in the sand, is not a particularly persuasive way to get somebody to see things from your perspective. So let me know what you think on this. Have you ever found yourself either in a circumstance where, the discovery of a concealed firearm made things a little uncomfortable socially, or the inverse, where someone discovered that you were a gun carrier and then expressed some intellectual curiosity? I want to hear both sides of the equation, so go ahead and put that down in the comments. And other than that, hope everybody has a fantastic week. Stay dangerous and stay sharp.